May Wyld West here, and guess what I did? Just don't know when to shut up. The story that was supposed to be 2 parts, I think is now going to be 4 parts.
Guess what? It's time again for the May Wyld West Show, the podcast where we tell the hedonistic adventures of myself and my husband in the modern American Wild West, where outdoor sex results in frostbite at least 6 months out of the year. The hubby, Mr. West, and I swing, sometimes hotwife, but mostly just enjoy spending time with our friends and having kinky sex. Our motto is, we'll try anything once for science. If you're looking for completely inappropriate stories and adult content, you've come to the right place, because this podcast is intended for entertainment purposes only and shouldn't be considered professional, medical, or sometimes good advice. The topics we talk about will be spicy, sexy, and not safe for work, kids, or your local PTA Karen. Now let's full send into today's episode.
Hey everybody, May Wyld West here, and I know that some of you may be completely shocked by this, but I have a problem where I start talking and I just don't know when to shut up. And so my little short 2-part story that I was going to write has now blossomed into 3 parts, and I just couldn't leave the 4th part out because the 4th part of the story is the reclaiming, which to me is one of the most important parts of the whole hot wife swinging thing, is when you come back together with your partner and you have mind-blowing sex because you've just been so turned on by everything that's going on and the way that he looks at you when you're doing it, and it's like a biological imperative. So I just couldn't leave that part of the story out. And now, before we get to any more about the story, we're going to do a tip of the day. So here's just the tip.
Just the tip.
I get asked all the time about anal sex, and why is it that I like anal sex, and how is it that I can do anal sex without it hurting. Okay, sometimes it does, that's part of the thing is, but what I'm going to tell you, my biggest secret is A, lube, and B, butt plugs. Now, I am not talking about those butt plugs that you get off Amazon that have the little jewel, that are metal, and then you put them in and they look super cute as long as you're all bent over with your ass cheeks spread and the little on your tummy arch back position like a cat. Super cute and sexy. But if you want to wear them for more than 30 seconds or you have butt cheeks that touch each other, then those things hurt. So, what I'm going to tell you is about my favorite brand of butt plugs. First things first, I only buy butt plugs with T-handles because, well, shit. That way they're comfortable, and if you're going to get good at anal sex, then you need to be able to wear a butt plug for a little while. My favorite brand are called Thunder plugs, and what it is they're silicone butt plugs. They've got T-handles. I don't know. They maybe they're for for men, but I don't know what makes a butt plug for men and what makes a butt plug for women. But they have a little metal ball inside of them, so if you're wearing it while you're having sex, every time he hits you, the little ball bounces around in there, and it feels really good. The nice part is you get a small one. The small one is for your getting ready for it wear. You can wear that one for a couple hours at a time before you work up to a larger one. And if you're used to having that feeling of fullness, you're used to having something back there, it's easier for you to relax. So I will make sure to put a link on my on my website so that you guys can find a Thunder plug, and then you can try one out yourself. So that is my just the tip.
Just the tip.
Before we get to the story, The story involves some restraints and sex swing, and it'd have been a whole lot easier to have written the story if I knew anything about shibari. Because there was this one time, Mr. West and I made friends with this guy. I like to call him Mr. EMT because, well, he was an EMT, which was the one reason why I let him choke me, because I do like breath play, but I'm really careful about who I let do that. Like Mr. West gets to do it, but an EMT, that's their job. Bring it back if you do go too far. So I figured it was pretty safe. Anyway, Mr. EMT also knew some shibari, and he did this rope work tie knot thing that was in my upper body, and then my hands were tied behind my back. Well, however it did it, it made like a suitcase handle on my back. And so when Mr. West or Mr. EMT were fucking me from behind, I could lean forward and they could just hold that suitcase, and it gave you this whole feeling of weightlessness. And then when you would like rock back towards them, or they would pull you into them, like the entire experience was so much more intense because there was that feeling of weightlessness. So if anybody has any idea what I'm talking about, or can help me to be able to describe what I'm talking about in a book, if you would let me know, I would sure appreciate it, because I would like to use that in a story. I just don't know what I'm talking about. Okay, this is Truck Repairs or Gangbang. Round 3 goes to the guys by May Wyld West.
Once upon a time.
I think I may have underestimated the kinkiness of the guys, because when I stepped out of the steamy bathroom in my silky robe and into our bedroom, instead of finding my lingerie laying on the bed, there was a blindfold. I was a little confused, but Mr. West knew I loved being unable to see what was coming next. It heightened the entire experience and makes me come like none other. I clapped my hands and jumped up and down like a little kid getting their favorite treat. "Ooh, goody," I giggled, stripping out of the robe, and jumped on the bed, ready to be used by them all again. But nobody moved towards me. Mr. West curled his finger at me in a come-here motion, and I crawled towards the foot of the bed, and him, with my ass wiggling behind me. When I got close, he wrapped one large hand around my throat and brought me closer to him so I could hear him whisper in my ear, "Ready to play, sexy?" And then he growled low next to my ear, giving me shivers and goosebumps all over. Not because I was cold. Quite the opposite. "Okay, May, we've all seen how naughty you can be. Now it's time to show them what a good girl you are. Now put on your robe and some shoes and hand me the blindfold," he ordered. I half tried to be sexy as I gathered up my things, but I hurriedly complied, wanting whatever came next, and especially whatever came after that. Should I wear heels? No. Wherever they're taking me, tennis shoes seemed like a safer bet. Shane looked down at my bright pink sneakers and ankle socks with my fluffy robe and just started laughing. "What?" "I half believe Mr. West would drop me off on a dirt road in nothing but what I have on, so I'm coming prepared. And my fluffy robe is super sexy," I giggled as I pulled the lapels apart to flash them all a good look of my perky breasts and slightly swollen pussy lips. Okay, so do you guys think that the pink shoes and the fluffy robe takes away from the sexiness of the story? I mean, because it's totally something I would do, but I'm not really sure if it distracts or not, so somebody's gonna have to let me know. And then sauntered over to Mr. West with the blindfold in my hand. The blindfold that Mr. West had selected was the cushy one that felt velvet and padded, which made me think that I may be blindfolded for a bit for him to break this one out. Once I could no longer see anything, I was unceremoniously tossed over somebody's shoulder and slapped on the ass. I wiggled and squealed like I was being murdered, only to receive another one, a little harder on the other ass cheek. That shut me up, and then I heard a jingle of metal, sort of like chains, and Mr. West said, "I have the restraints right here, but I'm not going to need them, because you're going to do exactly what we say." Then there was a long pause and a couple of laughs, followed by, "On the other hand, considering who I'm talking to, maybe we should just in case. I pretended to be indignant, but who am I kidding? Once I start to orgasm, my mind quits working and I have a hard time doing anything that requires brain function. The orgasms were like a drug that rolled over me, focusing my world down to only how everything felt in that moment and how to make everything feel as absolutely mind-blowing as possible. Before I knew it, my hands and ankles were tied together with the wrist and ankle restraints Mr. West and I had bought on a whim one time. We rarely used them because he was always too eager to get his hands on me, and we forgot. But I shivered with excitement and apprehension, not knowing what was going to come next. I was back over the shoulder of one of them, another smack on each ass cheek, but this time I restrained my hysteria and behaved like a good girl. For the moment. I felt the man carrying me start to walk out of the room and towards the doorway. I knew it. They were taking me somewhere out in the boonies and making me walk home naked for teasing them too long. Not that the idea didn't appeal just a little to my exhibitionist side. I mused. This late at night the chances that anyone would see me running down the road naked were slim, but the chance I would get caught was what always gave me the butterflies in my stomach and a little bit lower, when I'd flash my boobs or my ass or sometimes even my pussy to Mr. West out in public. Definitely thinking this is going to be another story. Then I heard the shop door open and the man carrying me stepped up and walked in the door. I'd overreacted. I was back in the shop, on my feet, still blindfolded, and no wiser about what was going to happen. I felt the clips on the wrist restraints being undone and the robes removed from my body, so I stood there completely naked except for my shoes and ankle socks. The cool air was like nature's boob job as the goosebumps covered my body and my nipples stood hard at attention and pulled my breasts upward, tightening everything. I had absolutely no fucking idea what was going on. What I didn't know until much later was that Mr. West had snuck into the house and taken the sex swing that we had bought, but he had yet to install, and brought it to the shop. They had then hooked it to a hoist from the ceiling so they could lower, raise, spin, and manhandle me to their heart's delight. Since I didn't know, I was surprised enough that a squeak escaped my lips before I could stop it when I was lifted into the air by two strong hands around my waist. No need to give them any excuse to put a gag in my mouth, I laughed. I flew through the air and was deposited on what felt like a sling made of straps that suspended my whole body, laid out on my back, with my hands restrained by my sides and my feet in the air, in ankle supports. I was like the proverbial turtle on her back. Fucked. Or about to be. I felt myself rise up in the air and then spin around in circles a couple of times, the breeze blowing the musky guy smell of each of them towards me. I couldn't wait to stop spinning and put one of those dicks in my mouth and my pussy. I was already more than wet and ready. Even my mouth was watering. I tried to reach my hand for a cock, but was stopped short by the wrist restraints. I made a small whining noise, but all I got for my trouble was a couple of chuckles and a "no touchy for you" from one of the guys. Slowly I stopped spinning and my shoulders and legs were grabbed gently, but firmly, so I came to a stop in what I assumed was directly in front of two of the men. First thing I felt was someone tapping a hard rod on my lip twice before I opened up to feel what had to be Shane's cock into my mouth and thrust forward just a little bit before withdrawing. He repeated the motion, thrusting forward a little bit further each time till he was almost touching the back of my throat. Then he thrust in and out until I started making that gah 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 sound that is music to every man's ears. How, you may ask, did a girl who can't deep throat do such an excellent job of being face fucked? Well, it sure as fuck helps when on the other end you're having so many orgasms that your brain is shut down completely. On that end of Mr. West's playground, one of the guys, Matt, if I had to guess, had started fingering my pussy in that one come-hither way that some guys can do it, that makes your eyes roll back in your head like you're in The Exorcism, and if you're me, gush like a fountain. If I hadn't had a dick fucking my mouth like it was his job, then I probably would have been screaming, "Oh God, fuck me," on repeat. Then all of a sudden his fingers jerked out of my hole and his cock slammed home to the base in one lunge. I was shoved forward onto Shane as he thrust forward, actually pushing into my throat and making me gag. He pulled back before it was too much, but I could feel his cock pulse get hard and I could tell how close he was. I feel like somehow in here in the middle of this, I should have added the hak tui thing and spit on it, but, you know, too little too late. Then I felt him pull his shaft all the way out of my mouth as the man between my thighs started pounding into me, pulling the swing and my whole body into his with every thrust. I was nothing more than a rag doll in the swing, my body racked with orgasm after orgasm. Then he made 3 last hard thrusts before he emptied his load into my spasming pussy, thrusting and coming till he pulled out and the cum ran out of me. Then I felt something cold as someone started rubbing lube on my puckered hole and slowly working a finger and more lube inside me, preparing me for the ass fucking that was coming. The way his fingers felt, I was pretty sure it was Shane doing all the work back there, but when I felt the large helmet head of what I was sure was Sam's large organ pressing against my lips, I was certain. I opened my mouth as wide as I could, and luckily for me, Sam had put some coconut oil on his length, so it more easily slid past my spread lips. I used my tongue to massage on the bottom side of the head, in that one sensitive spot that curls a guy's toes, as he rocked his hips and dick in and out of my mouth, picking up speed as time went on. And it worked slick for me that Shane was shorter than Sam, because when he lined his cock up with my ass and started pulling me back into him, my head tipped upwards and that made the angle that Sam's dick was entering my mouth even easier. So there I was, rocking back and forth in my sex swing as Shane pumped my ass up and down on his rod and my mouth fucked Sam's raging hard organ. I felt almost weightless as I lay there, the orgasms rolling over me like an earthquake that was never going to end. If my mouth hadn't been so full of man meat, I would have been sobbing. I felt like I had stuck my finger in a socket. Shane reached down between us and found my clit with his thumb and started giving my vibrator a run for its money. At that moment I couldn't help but come so hard I squirted, and the wet, sloppy sounds of our fucking echoed through the shops. Just then, when I wasn't sure how much more I could take, I felt the telltale sign that a man's going to come, when at the same time they both lost rhythm, stutter-fucked, and then thrust forward hard again and filled my ass and mouth. It felt as if it would drown me or start coming out of my nose. As they both stepped away, I sagged backward into my netting nest, completely wiped out, but also completely sexually satiated. I heard and felt the Velcro on the back of the blindfold release, and suddenly I was blinded by the overhead lights of the shop. Then a face came into focus as it blocked out some of the insanely bright lights. It was Mr. West. "How you feelin', babe? Had enough yet?" he said, as he unclipped the wrist and ankle restraints, and then covered me up with the fluffy robe, which would need washing tomorrow, but that was a problem for a different hour. "Maybe enough for the moment," I murmured, as he picked me up and cradled me in his arms. "At least get me a nap, and maybe a snack." My last thought before I fell asleep, with my head on Mr. West's shoulder, as he carried me out the door of the shop to our bed, was, I couldn't wait for us to be alone, because I wanted him more than my body should be capable of after what I had done so far. But the best part was yet to come. So that is part number 3 of the truck repair or gangbang story. I think that there's a couple of things that I wish I could figure out how to have worked into them. Like, for example, would have loved to try and work some DP in there, but I just couldn't figure out how to logistically do it.
You can do it!
You sort of almost end up painting yourself into a corner sometimes because of the way that you set up the scene and the things that are going on. I mean, there's just no way for a person to be swinging in the air from a hoist and get a dick from underneath logistically. Or at least I couldn't figure out how to explain it. If anybody else can figure out how to explain that one, I'd sure appreciate the help. The one part of the story I thought that made it the most realistic is the part where, considering my hands were restrained, there was no need for me to try to jerk off 2 dicks or a dick at the same time as I was trying to get fucked in the face and fucked in the ass or fucked in the pussy. Because as much as it seems like it would work For me, it just doesn't. I think it's the whole pat top of your head, rub your belly at the same time thing, and I just can't make two different motions with one with each hand at the same time. Never been able to. Okay, so as I am sitting here Wednesday night at Thursday morning at 12:56 a.m. trying to put together a podcast episode, I'm realizing that summer is making this very, very difficult for me to get a podcast done every single week. And so I have two choices. First choice is that I'm going to take a few weeks off and chill out and try and maybe take some time to get caught up or ahead. My other idea is that I am going to do episodes once every 2 weeks over the summer. If you guys have any opinions, let me know what you think. I'm going to do one more episode next Thursday, and it'll be the final part of the story. And then we will have a decision whether I'm going to take a little bit of a break or if we're just going to slow down a little bit. If anybody has any interesting stories, has an interesting kink. Actually, all of them are interesting. But you're interested in being on the May Wyld West show as a guest, please get a hold of me. I promise you I'm not mean, and we could have a good time. But since it is 1 o'clock in the morning, that is going to be all for me this week. Sorry the episode's a little bit short, but have a good week.
I want to remind everybody to subscribe and check out my social media for more inappropriate shenanigans. I have X, Reddit, and Instagram, as well as FetLife, Facebook, and a website. That link and those to my social media will be in the podcast description. You'd be my hero for real if you'd check out my social media pages, put a review on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen, or share my podcast with your other inappropriate friends. So, if you had a good time with me today, and I'm always a good time, please subscribe so you don't miss out on a single riveting story, shocking confession, or just something dirty and funny. I love hearing your feedback, so feel free to message me on any of my social media. Thanks, and remember, if you can be Batman, always be Batman.